Hello, this is Jess, and this is my Decolonial vision board. I added a bunch of pictures and some quotes that represent who I want to become as an educator and what has become important to me on my journey to becoming a more social just educator. As a social just educator, I want to become more aware, which is why I added the picture that has the word key, which stands for keep educating yourself. I want to constantly be learning more and educating myself more as well. As an educator, I want to make sure every student is listened to and cared for. Oftentimes, their identities and their funds of knowledge go disregarded, and I definitely don't want to do that with my future students. This is why I added the picture with the students around the table, as I want to assure that I gave a seat to every student and that I give them the necessary tools to develop themselves. I'm a firm believer that students do not come into the classroom being empty vessels which we as educators are supposed to fill, but rather they come into the classroom knowing a lot, and that goes hand in hand with their educational journey. This is also why I added the image with the people and the light bulbs, because we all have knowledge to share and we can learn from one another. This idea is also present with the two pictures of the trees, because we are all connected with one another and we can all learn from that. I want to advocate for the voices of my future students, which is why I also added the image of the rainbow hands. Every student has knowledge to share, and this has become very important to me on my journey to becoming an educator. As an educator, bilingualism is very important, which is why I added the bilingual picture. I remember as a child I was pushed in an English-only direction, and this took away from my identity, and that is something I want to avoid doing to my future students. Joy will be infused all throughout my journey, as I am a firm believer that a student who feels loved and is listened to is more willing to learn. This is why I added the image of the brain and the heart. I also added the image of the teacher with the students to show the importance of relationship building between students and teachers. I want to include joy in a way that students feel loved and listened to. This approach will also influence how I infuse wellness and self-care. I want to meet the needs of my students, but in order for me to achieve that, I have to listen to them and also be aware. Aware of how their culture affects their needs, aware of how their upbringing affects their needs. It is just important for me to be aware of all the surrounding aspects. This is why I added the image of the hands with the heart and the hands within the red heart, because part of being aware is listening to my students and offering a hand with true cariño and love. I want my students to grow and develop into who they are set to be. This is why there are the images of plants growing. I want my students to bloom into something beautiful. I also added the image that says, let's root for each other and watch each other grow. I want to help my students grow and bloom into beautiful, thoughtful thinkers. This is why I also added the image of the butterfly. I believe butterflies are like beautiful, powerful souls, and in this specific image, the butterfly has fists within the wings, which I believe represent strength. When asked who inspires me, I would have to say my younger self, which is why I added the image of an older woman holding a younger woman. It represents my younger self who never believed she was capable of higher education, who was shown in school that her education was not worthwhile and that there was no room for her in higher education. As a young child in school, I always felt alone. This is why I added the image of the single person being alone among others. That's how I felt when I was shown my educational journey was not of importance. My younger self, who believed all that, inspires me now because I never want any of my students to feel one bit of what I felt as a child. My family also inspires me as they're the ones who have constantly supported my journey in higher education. They have also constantly validated my knowledge and my educational journey. This is why I added the image of the home with hearts in it. Lastly, I added some quotes. One is from one of the readings, and the other two are ones I have found during my educational journey that have helped me really feel validated. The first one is from one of the readings. It states, "A critical understanding of culture and education means that educators must recognize the unequal power relations among cultures that result in unequal status and treatment in a society and in schools." This is what I was speaking about earlier when I said it is important for me to be aware, because I have seen teachers not be aware when working with underserved and underrepresented students. This really harms the students as there is a lack of awareness of their marginalization. The next quote I added is, "Nos quieren enterrar pero olvidan que somos semillas." When I first read this quote, I absolutely loved it because aside from all the marginalization I faced in my educational journey, I have still been able to bloom. So no matter how much they bury us, we will always be able to bloom because we are seeds. I also added the quote, "My revolution is born out of the love for my people, not the hatred for others." This idea is very true for myself. Everything I do and everything I believe in is because of the love I have for my students, and it will always be that way. All right, that was it for my decolonial vision board. Thank you for listening.